Hey everybody, Sarah here with GermanShepherdCentral.net. I'm going to answer a couple of questions that you guys have sent in. Hopefully they'll be of use to you. The first question is from Cynthia, and she asks, my colleague has a German Shepherd who just turned 1 recently. His name is Jack, and she has noticed he has been biting younger dogs, specifically puppies, when she takes him to the dog park. What can she do to keep him from biting the other dogs? He doesn't seem to do it to older dogs. So this is a really common problem with German Shepherds, is they tend to be very enthusiastic players. Even if they like other dogs, not all of them do, but even if they get along well with other dogs, they tend to play in a way that other dogs don't necessarily like. And in this dog's case, he's 1, he's sort of on that cusp of adolescence and maturity, and he's starting to figure out, hey, I'm bigger than you, and I can play roughly. So the first thing we would need to do is to make sure that the German Shepherd isn't hurting any other dogs or puppies. If you're in a situation where your dog is leaving marks on another dog, bite marks or any kind of puncture wounds, that sort of thing, that dog needs to stop interacting with other dogs immediately, and you need to contact a behavior professional, and there's some resources on our website to help you find one. International Association of Behavior Consultants and the Association of Pet Dog Trainers, both good places for that. The other thing that needs to happen is you need to determine what kinds of play styles your dog likes and what dogs they get along with. So are there dogs, can you identify dogs that your dog likes, that your dog gets along well with, that they play together nicely? And what that looks like is they're able to interrupt and take breaks from playing. They'll maybe take a break and go sniff. Both dogs are enjoying the interaction. Nobody's trying to hide or get away from the other dog. If it's a smaller dog, they're not begging to be picked up, right? Those sorts of things. So that's how you can tell that the play is going well. And focus on getting your dog to play with those dogs and maybe slow down those interactions with the smaller dogs or puppies that aren't going as well. And then third, we mainly need to ask ourselves, does this dog need to play with other dogs at all? Which is maybe a surprising question to a lot of dog owners, but as dogs approach maturity and become adults, they don't always need to play with other dogs. So they can play with you, right? They can play tug, fetch, get those sorts of things out of the way. They can have a couple close doggy friends if that's possible, if they're not hurting other dogs. But in terms of that regular sort of free-for-all interaction, they don't really need that. That's something that can actually create more bad behaviors than good. So with those 3 things in mind, maybe she can change her approach to the dog park. Certainly there are ways to train your German Shepherd not to interact that way with other dogs. It can be more or less difficult depending on the individual dog. German Shepherds are meant to herd, and so one of the things they love to do is chase and bite. And so other dogs who don't have that play style don't appreciate it, and it can be really difficult if you're not a trained behavior professional to have your dog redirect and do something else. Your best bet, though, is that if your dog doesn't resource guard toys, is to take a toy with you and just focus on playing with that toy and getting the dog engaged in that toy rather than playing with the other dogs. And at that point, again, we're asking, well, why are we at the dog park? Maybe we can do this at home or in a safe, enclosed area somewhere else. Okay, our second question comes from Belinda. And she asks, hi, Sarah. I've just come across your great site. Thank you. I'm a first-time GSD owner/dog trainer, and my neutered boy is days from turning 1, so another adolescent. We've been to obedience training starting from puppy school, but he is extremely wary of people outside the home and very reactive if there's a knock on the door. He also jumps up and mouths me and will also jump up on me if my partner and I cuddle. I've been advised that he doesn't respect me and that I should smack his muzzle should he mouth or pull on my clothing. I'm new to all of this, but I refuse to smack my boy and instead to try to interrupt his behavior for asking for a sit and then drop or down, which mostly works. I believe we need to work on building his confidence and counter-condition his reaction to door knocks, and any advice would be greatly appreciated. Well, Belinda is right on the money. For a number of reasons, it's not a great idea to smack your dog. Although probably tempting at times, especially with an adolescent German Shepherd, and that's where a lot of advice, well-meaning advice from people comes from, but not necessarily that helpful. So the question of whether he respects you is one only he can answer. So until they learn to speak English, we're not going to be able to really answer that question definitively. However, I think that what a lot of people mean when they say that is, the dog isn't listening to you, the dog's not being obedient, and the fastest way to make that work is to punish the dog. Well, what we know, in fact, and as Belinda alluded to, that's not really a great idea, especially with a sensitive and large breed like a German Shepherd. One of the things we know from a couple of studies that are out there, that physical aggression creates the tendency for more physical aggression from the animal. So if I'm physically aggressive with my animal, it's going to create the tendency in him to come back and be physically aggressive towards me. Of course, this isn't always the case, and I'm sure there are people who are out there doing all kinds of awful things to animals and not getting bitten in return, but that would be my first warning, is that you do not want to attempt any kind of physical correction or punishment, because there is a risk of increased aggression towards the person doing it. And then there's also an increased risk of the dog becoming more aggressive towards dogs or people. So in the instance of him being wary of strangers, if his owner starts physically correcting him, now, especially if there are strangers around, he could make that association with the stranger and not necessarily with his behavior. So in other words, he would start to think, when that stranger comes close, my mom gets really upset and hurts me, so I've got to keep that stranger away so I don't get hurt. So that's another really important reason not to use physical correction with your shepherd. But as to the point of counter conditioning and trying to get him relaxed and comfortable around strangers, that's a great idea. At 1 year old, he probably hasn't had a ton of practice being worried. Not like an older dog, 3 or 4, where we really have to dig in and go backwards. So you're at a good point to at least start with that training. And I'd really advise you to find somebody who deals in positive training to help you along in that process. Because even though we're talking about changing his feelings into good feelings from bad feelings, there's still plenty of opportunities for mistakes to be made. And if you're not well versed in classical or counter conditioning and desensitization, you could end up in trouble there. As for the jumping up, the positive interruption by asking to down and pause for a minute. If it mostly works, you can keep using that. The other approach you might try is to tether him somewhere nearby while you guys are presumably on the couch or something. Have some treats, but keep him tethered out of range so that he can't actually physically jump up and, get on you or mouth you. And just wait for him to settle on his own, whether that means lying down on his own, whether that means standing there calmly, whatever that means, basically looking for him to take it down a notch, right? So whatever he's been doing, take it down a notch. And you won't say anything. You'll just sit there and wait, carry on as if he isn't there. And then the second that he offers some version of a settle, you would toss him a treat and some food. And you could do that, a couple times in an evening, crating him or putting him up the rest of the time so you can enjoy your evening together.